Welcome to Sorting Myself Out. My name is Ryan Holsapple, and today my co-host Mercury Black and I will be speaking with Cris M, U.S. military veteran with a special interest in psychology. He has a very captivating perspective. He's a great speaker, as well as somebody who has been a voracious reader for the past few years. So we get to kind of explore some of the books he's been reading, as well as some of the topics he's been studying in graduate school as he's diving deeper into psychology. Cris is just somebody that is really interesting to talk to, so I think you'll also find him interesting to listen to. If you want to support the channel, go to the link in the description. It's now up on my website, so that would be much appreciated if you have the resources or care to do so. I hope you enjoy this conversation we have with Cris.
You know, I started to get more into psychology at this point, and you guys came along, and I was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy, you know, because you have from what I understand, you have a background in Jung as well. And, you know, I was really getting into Jung for the past 2 years. So it's really weird. It's really weird how those things kind of work out.
Yeah. Well, I just started my program in October that's focused in Jungian studies. I had a interest in Jung before and done some of his reading, but it's been the last 7 months or so that I've really dove deeper into his content, and it's been well worth it.
How you like it so far?
I love it, man. That's what our whole graduate program is all focused on, his work. Then we have some other depth psychologists, as well as people like James Hillman and other people that are a part of that lineage. And I think it's great. Dr. Strachan really helps me to put it in context as far as where psychology is today. I have a part of me that really likes the neurobiology aspect of psychology. So I work hard to try to figure out how to bridge that gap, because there's the esoteric piece and then there's the biological piece. And even Jung said there's a spectrum of archetypes. Some of them are more on that spiritual side and some of them are more on that instinctual side. So yeah, I'm kind of working through that. I think there's a potential doctoral thesis in that question for me.
So good. That's amazing. I'm glad you mentioned Hillman. The only work that I'm familiar with Hillman is last year I was going to visit some family, and it was quite a drive. So I listened to his 8-hour In Defense of Jung on YouTube. And I actually bought this yellow Deidre Blair biography.
Can you hold it up, because I have that book, and I read that last quarter.
So difficult with the headphones.
No, yeah.
So this is it right here.
Yep, I have that one. Yeah,
I got some of the way into it, and then I was like, that's how a lot of my books are. You know, I kind of get into them like a couple hundred pages, and then I'm like, okay, let's see something else, but
yeah. It's weird with reading, man, because there's a part of it. I'm kind of a completionist sometimes, and I want to finish things, and then other times you lose interest in the book, and then something else inspires you, and you just want to keep reading. Where sometimes if I get bogged down in one book, I force myself to complete it, I kind of lose interest in it a little bit, like I'm doing it as a chore rather than reading it because I want to. But in school, you don't really have a choice. But so there's something to be said about being able to put a book down, pick up another one, and then come back to it later. That's what I did with Maps of Meaning. I picked up Maps of Meaning. I read it hard for like 2 months, and it's like a textbook. So there's a lot to unpack. And then I put it down for a few months, and then I finished it. And I'm glad I finished it because it was worth it. Have you checked that one out?
Yeah, I have that one. It's over there. I read through it. Yeah. I actually read through it after I listened to all of his lectures. So
nice.
I actually listened to his 2015 all the way through 17 lectures.
Sweet.
And I didn't even know, like I wasn't even interested in getting the book. And then I listened to his lectures over and over and over and over until I had like a solid foundation in understanding it. And then I read the book, and it was a breeze. It was like just listening to him lecture. So it's really awesome. Interesting to see his underlying, it's really just stayed the same kind of, and he's kind of, I think he talks about it, right? He tries to incorporate new ideas and sees if it fits within his schema of, foundations, and, he kind of fights with it. And if it prevails, and he kind of incorporates it. But if not, then he just kind of leaves it by the wayside.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a couple things I wanted to get out of the way. First is, are you cool if we talk about the Sacred Flip course for a few minutes to start, and then we can just shoot the shit for the rest of the time?
Yeah, sure. I read through it quickly, so I noticed that it was kind of like left up to the people that are participating into it, right?
Yeah,
Every
you don't
week
have
it's
to
like
read
you
the whole
slowly,
thing.
right? Yeah, I got a warm and fuzzy on it, but I won't be able to defend it or anything. So
Yeah, no, not necessary. But what I wanted to do is just kind of an intake process with you, because
sure,
that's
yeah,
what we've been doing with everyone. So can you just tell us a little bit about why you want to do it and what was interesting to you about it?
yeah. So I was interested in it because it's kind of pushing me outside of my comfort zone in a way. How do I say this? I kind of went from, so I was in the military for a while, for 6 years. And then, that's a big social environment, right? So I learned how to socialize in a certain way with certain people, because there's this certain type of group of people that you get around and you know how to act around, right? Yeah, I'm sure that you do this with school as well. I'm in school and I see how this socialization goes, right? So this is like my reintegration kind of, I'm trying to get back into this group of people by trying to be, I don't know exactly how it's going to be, but be more vulnerable with people. Because instead of being more like, kind of like what Merc's doing right now, he's like listening really attentively. Like, I can't turn that off. And it kind of separates me from reality in a way, because I'm only analyzing. And so I'm trying to build and, I guess learn more about myself on how to like bring those two pieces of me together, because I can be vulnerable and I can be analytical, right? But I need to be able to bring those two things together. And, you brought that up, so I thought that would be a good thing for me to do. And then I watched your Dr. Strachan interview, and I was like, okay, so if it's something like that, I absolutely understand how that kind of works, because like I said, it's kind of like the individuation process. And so I'm aware of these things within me, and I want to see how that kind of works when you're vulnerable with a bunch of other different people that are at different levels of, their own development, right? Because I think that I have a lot to offer to other people, and I also want other people to offer me things. So I guess that's an introduction.
You were in the military for 6 years?
Right.
Right on. I've got a buddy that he's in my program with me at school, and he's an ex-military captain, and he's awesome. Gosh, I get so much respect for you guys because of the discipline and the work that you've done. And we always chat, and he's like, well, I got so much respect for you because you are the only guy in class that has the balls to tell everyone when they're full of shit, when we get into super like SJW stuff. But I digress. Anyways, my point is that I can feel your presence. You got a strong energy and a commanding presence. And I'm curious to see how that plays through in the course, because that in my view, that would be considered as one of the strong subpersonalities. One of the ones that is in the forefront is that strong presence, that commanding analytical presence that you're talking about. Also, you've got a voracious reader in you somewhere, a learner. Look at all the books behind you, and your comments show that you have a large intellectual appetite. So we'll work with these different personalities, and then we'll look at some that maybe you're more uncomfortable with, like you talked about the vulnerability, and maybe there's other parts of yourself you'll discover that you haven't fully embraced yet. And you absolutely nailed it in your comment, because in the exploration of all that, you get closer to a sort of mastery over your own psyche. And that's a lifelong process, right? We're just getting started here, but it doesn't important to start. Yeah.
That's another thing that's really interesting too, because I don't know the individuation process inside and out, but I have a warm and fuzzy, like I said, about it. And maybe it's a skewed version of it, but it's kind of the way that I understand it. And that's the first thing, first kind of assumption that I came to. I was like, this doesn't stop happening. And then once I realized that, I kind of looked back on my life and I was like, oh yeah, I've been doing it this whole time. You constantly put yourself into situations. It's that pressure that makes you move, and so some people move, some people get stuck.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That whole program that you're talking about, you know, it escapes me right now. It's on my desktop.
The Sacred Flip.
Sacred Flip. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why it's called that in a second.
Yeah, sure. And so, you know, I see a lot of Jung in there. And like you said, Dr. Strachan is it Gestalt therapy?
Gestalt. Yeah.
Gestalt therapy. So it seems like there's a lot of that in there as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, just really getting out of my comfort zone and throwing myself into the fire.
So we're all going to be out of our comfort zones, including me. So it's going to be in a good way. We're going to be pushing the edge of the envelope in a safe way. You know, obviously, when you're dealing with a group of people that all have different psychological content and triggers, it can be a tenuous situation. So we're going to be very mindful and structured and safe about it, but we are going to push the edge a little bit to see what's there. But I did mention in the video, the intro, it's not a replacement for clinical therapy, you know, but whatsoever. Right. People still need to have their own support systems. But anyways, the reason it's called the Sacred Flip, I went through my training with Strachan, and then after we trained together, he took me under his wing. And that was about 4 years ago. And he said, listen, buddy, you can call me anytime. You can always bug me. I just want you to know that you've got me for life. And I was like, what? What did I do to deserve that? What God's blessed me to get that? Because people don't get that. And I was like, I must have got lucky. And so I called Roger one day, and this was after I had a intense emotional breakdown. Like I was going to my dad's office once a week, and I was working with one of the people in the office, and they got pissed at me, and they were like, "You're not doing this right. You're not doing that right." And I just lost it. I got pissed. I was like, "Well, fuck you. I'm out of here. I'm not working here anymore." And then I drove. I got in my car, and I just I couldn't figure out what was happening to me, because it was like I was having a breakdown. It was like I was losing my sense of identity. I felt like I was fighting for my life, and I didn't know why. I didn't know why I felt so triggered. And the night before, I had these crazy dreams about transmutation of energy, where it would change colors, and you'd do these somersaults, and you'd come out of it in this different way. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the beginning of the Sacred Flip. I called Roger, and I say, Raj, I'm a mess right now, and I can't figure out what's wrong with me. I'm so fucking pissed. And he said, well, that, you know, we talked to him. Well, that's your challenger. That's a subpersonality. And your challenger brought 10 pounds to a 1 pound argument. And so that was the beginning. I was realizing that the person said something, and I brought a fucking arsenal to respond. And that was the way that I reacted. And so that led to this whole process of realizing that I used anger to protect my vulnerability.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a lifelong pattern for me, that I used fuck you to protect sensitivity. And that was the beginning. And so then I spent months working on it and repurposing these subpersonalities and learning how to be with the vulnerability and learning how to not take 10 pounds to a 1 pound argument, but just bring whatever's necessary. Yes, no, maybe, I don't like that. That's all right. You know, just normal responses.
Of course, right. And don't make mountains out of molehills, right?
Right. And so I had this cathartic release. But what I realized is that the Sacred Flip is the transmutation of the subpersonality. It's not that the challenger went away. It's that he did the Sacred Flip. He was repurposed. And so was the young boy inside of me, the sensitivity. And there was other parts of me that I'll talk about in the course. I'll tell that story in a longer version. But the point is that's Jungian alchemy. That's unifying the opposites within your psyche. And that is the Sacred Flip. And it's learning not to deny who you are, right? Because these different subpersonalities, from Strachan's perspective, they're just there. They are not something that you get to get rid of. They're not going anywhere. If you suppress them, they're just going to come back and bite you in the ass later on. And so what I learned was that if we can repurpose these subpersonalities from a place of soul-directed mindfulness, then they can work for us. Instead of having us
on a team.
Exactly.
Right. You can guide them. Right. So this is very interesting too, because from a young age, so I had kind of a rough upbringing, we won't get too far into that, but I've always found like my anger, I've always had anger, always. And so I've always had to find a way to purpose it, like to direct it. And I knew this from a young age. And so I got into martial arts when I was younger. My uncle kind of, he was like, hey, go do this, go hit this punching bag. And I was like, oh, I still do it to this day. So I've been doing it for maybe like 15, 17 years. And so every time I go to the gym, it's like when I feel that emotion, it's like, boom, I'm purposing it, right? I'm directing it towards something, from a fruiting point of view, it'd be like sublimation, right? I can't just go beat somebody up because they said something I don't like. It's like, okay, well, if I feel that strongly about it, I'm going to go to the gym and work that energy out and then go put it down on paper later when I'm clear headed, right? And so kind of doing, juggling both of those type of things where you're getting rid of the energy physically and you're also getting rid of that energy mentally. And so that's another thing about writing and reading for me as well. It's like I didn't read books until I was 25 and I'm 28 now. So, I've had lots of catching up to do. And, as I'm reading these books, I'm like, my whole life is, I don't know what would you say? I know the things that they're talking about because I've had the experiences in life. So like when Jung talks about the shadow and Peterson talks about the shadow, I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what that is. That's my friend, right? Because it's like when you're in these situations, like let's say, you're in Afghanistan, it's like, there's the shadow, right? He talks a lot about how PTSD, kind of like manifests itself into soldiers. Like they can't understand that they did something to another human being, right? And they go, well, that's not me, right? Yeah. Well, that is you, right? But it's how you can use that, right? And so that person didn't know that he can use it.
Right.
And then it came out, right? So when it came time for me to go to Afghanistan, I was like, this was just like another day with weapons now, because I've already had this experience with violence and anger and aggression and all of that, right? And so you can really see this dichotomy between different levels of development between adults.
Yes.
It's like, everybody talks a certain way, but then when things like that happen, you see this shift. It's like, oh, you're not that person that you thought you were, right? And it's kind of back and forth. It's very interesting to see all of that. And so, when I found Jung, I went to Afghanistan when I was 19, 20 years old. So now I'm 28. And so I started reading Jung, really reading Jung like a year ago. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know what I mean? It's like, there it is. I've seen and experienced these things. So
that's fantastic. And one of the other things that will come out in this model, and this is something that Roger drives home a lot, is everything is attraction and connection. So I have a part of me that's a warrior. Okay, that's high command, high energy, high drive. It's not like literally going to war. It's just that high intensity. I just call it the warrior. For example, I like doing the ice baths. I like challenging my body. I like pushing myself to the limit. So in this call, my warrior's up. My warrior hasn't been in any of the other calls at all, but your energy attracts that part of me. So everything is attraction and connection. So we bring to situations the sub-personalities that are attracted to that situation. The other call we did with Angelina brought out my caregiver, who's sweet, soft, gentle, no warrior in it at all. And so, and just even Mercury, watching the way I'm interacting with you, it's much different than the way I've interacted with the other callers. And so just one thing to be aware of as you continue to go through this process is what you bring to each situation. What do you bring to reading a book versus what do you bring to going on a run? And then you'll start to see that neurological circuitry get triggered. And you're like, oh my God, this is a completely different set of experiences I'm having, just like you just explained. So I think you're a great fit for this. I don't think this intake has to go too much longer. The other thing is just time commitment. Do you feel like you can make the first call? It's on June 1st, 2 to 4 p.m. MST. That's a Saturday.
Yeah. I'm not going to summer school this semester, so I'm good.
While the group is on that first call, we're going to schedule the rest of the calls together as a group. That way, everybody can make every single call. So we'll take the last 15, 20 minutes to do that. Mercury, am I missing anything that I said to the other callers that you think Chris needs to know?
The amount of homework, the video, and the reading list you'll be sending.
And the partners.
Is that going to be in like a PDF or you want me to write it down?
Oh, I'm gonna try to be as professional as possible, my friend.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Sending it over on Monday. I'm not gonna make you write it down.
Okay.
So
Well,
Monday, I'm gonna send you all. I'm gonna send you all a reading list Monday or Tuesday. Reading list, orientation email with a video of me explaining how to get started, and then on the first call, you'll walk away with homework, as well as every single person will have a partner, and you'll be doing partner exercises at least once in between each call, and I'll explain all that. So Mercury and I are gonna look through the list after we finish all the intakes, and we're gonna try to pair people as well as we can. And hopefully, if that goes well, then you just stay with that partner throughout the whole course. If it doesn't seem like a fit, then all you have to do is let us know, and we'll mix the partners around a little bit. So there's no problem.
So how exactly? So this is interesting. How are you going to go about pairing, right? So the thing that immediately comes to my mind is I need somebody opposite to me to teach me the opposite of me. You see what I mean?
Yeah, well then just.
But I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there. That's
the way I go about pairing is I get a read on each person, and then I do a pretty in-depth process of looking at what are the dynamics that would be best based on what I've learned here.
Okay.
And so I basically take a stab at a kind of an intuitive guess. It's based on information, so it's an educated choice that Mercury and I would make. So yes, we will keep that in mind. And again, like if it doesn't seem to be mashing, then we will go ahead and switch things up. But yeah, we'll keep that in mind. I think that's a good idea for you to have someone who compliments you in that way and draws out some of those other parts of you.
Yeah, especially because I get such a strong sense of discipline, purpose, intensity from you, that if we can match you with someone who needs all that,
right? Well, thank you.
Really for both of you, because it's great to be appreciated for what you genuinely are, as opposed to what you're trying to force yourself to be.
Right.
And so I just sense that so naturally from you that I think it'll be really good if we can find someone who needs that, and that'll be very rewarding for you. Sure,
that'll be great. Yeah. And I appreciate that comment, but it's hard to be as everybody knows, so I'm not any more disciplined than the next guy, I still slack off. I still do those things. So,
yeah,
you come from a different point of view as well, because if I'm paired with somebody who's opposite to me and they can sense that, like you said, that discipline in me, I can still talk to them like I'm not a god, I still suck too, like sometimes I still, hey, I got to write, 1,400 word paper or something. It's like the night before, like, oh God, I've had a week,
Right.
So, we all go through the same things. It's just, how you control them.
So tell us the story of your tattoos. I have to hear that next.
Okay.
I think they struck me right away. I was like, those are awesome. Is there a story behind them?
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, there's stories. They're a little bit intimate, but I'll just kind of give you a rough overview. So
you don't have to get too deep.
No, that's okay. This was my first one when I was 18. So right out of the box, I got a tattoo. It's music. I got my guitar here. I've always played guitar. I've always known from a young age that it heals the soul. So I finished it it's not finished, but this was the second portion of it. It's kind of like music notes with the guitar pick with the sun. So that was after Afghanistan. And then I got this when I joined the Army for some of my family members that passed away. So and then that's that.
So with the guitar piece, when you're going through the first assignment that I'll send out on Monday or Tuesday, identify the part of you that's the musician or the musical part or the artist part. Make sure to keep that in mind as you're going through that exercise. Okay. But that's great. I never would have figured that out if I didn't ask. Those are awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I've got one on my back. It's the Om symbol with a star around it. It needs a little more work. And then
no, I'm just kidding.
Let me take my shirt off.
No, I'm sorry. What is the one on your? What is the
literally? It's just a feather.
Oh, that's cool. Does it have any symbolic? Obviously, it has symbolic meaning. You don't have to get into it if you don't want to.
The symbolic meaning is one night I really wanted to tattoo. I couldn't think of anything better than a feather.
Right. Hey, that's okay.
My girlfriend and I got a tattoo together. We got our first tattoo together, and we've been together for 6 years. We met when we were 19. I'm a youngin'. I'm 25. And we were 20. We took a road trip to California. We were on the beach, and we were like, wait, let's get a tattoo. And so we wanted to get the same thing, and we just decided, well, feathers are cool. And the symbol is just that it was a meaningful experience. But and now when I look at it, I have a feeling of connection to it. But there's no like great like thought that get put into it.
Right. So I have one of those as well.
Oh, really?
I have that one.
Nice. Let's start.
So this one right here, I actually tattooed it on me, and then I tattooed my wife's on her when we were 17.
Oh shit.
So, I have one of those. It was like that spur of the moment. One of my friends down the street, he was trying to be a tattoo artist. And so we were like, hey, let's go get a tattoo, and so there it was. I tattooed mine, and then I was like, let me tattoo yours. So, we have that same connection as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I worked on learning how to do tattoos for a while. I apprenticed, but I never tried doing one on myself. I didn't think I would be able to concentrate through the pain.
Right. That's why I chose to do something quite simple. And, it's symbolic of California. So it's kind of like the nautical Northern California star. So it's simple, easy.
Yeah, right on. The only other thing for the sacred flip is the partners, the homework.
One moment, baby. Thank you.
And the partner exercises, the homework, and then there's one more thing. Hold on, let me pull it up real quick. Sorry.
This is the worst job you've done with an intake yet, Ryan. It's the first one we filmed. Every other one you were on the ball.
I know. I was like so ready.
Ready to go.
Let's go outside, please. Come on.
I know.
Thank you. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Come on, let's say hi. Say hi. They said hello. This is Leah. This is my oldest daughter. She's shy. She's so shy, but she wants to sit in here. And once so, hey, shut my door, please. That's the other one's they're over there drawing, so they enjoy lots of drawing.
That's awesome.
How old are they?
So my oldest is 7, and my youngest, she'll be 6 in June.
My son's 7.
Well, awesome. Yeah, it's awesome to see them grow up. One day they're like, shitting in a diaper, and the next day they're like, they lost all their teeth, they got their adult teeth, and they're like writing in cursive. So it's really cool. It's an awesome journey.
I think that's everything. I don't think I forgot anything else, actually. I think that's all
cool.
that I...
Cool.
And
so is this the first time that you've put one of these, what do you call it, exploratory sessions? Because it's not...
I'll tell you the story. I worked for a company called the Earth-Based Institute for a while, and it's a great company. It's all transformation-based work. So I did teach some classes there. I didn't have my own full course, but I would teach aspects of courses, and as well as I would be a part of many different things we did there. And I created this course while I was there. It was like, if I was to run my own thing, I'd use what I had been learning from Strachan, what I learned from working with clients on one-on-ones, which I've done quite a bit of, and other aspects of my transformational process with the Earth-Based Institute, where we really learned the science of transformation. A lot of people don't understand that transformation is actually a scientific process that your psyche and your body goes through. There's actually like neurological things happening. There's actually symbolic things happening that are these thresholds that we pass through. So I was like, if I was to create that thing that felt like this is it for me. This is what's transformation for me. This is my first draft. So you are a guinea pig.
Hey, I'm okay with that. It's all right.
Although
that's what I was saying earlier. Like the pressure makes you move or makes you stand still. So
right, and I have used these processes with clients and in workshops and stuff when I've been teaching. But this is the first time it's all come together in one big long process. So I'm really excited to get this out there and just like I posted a video the other day, to stumble forward clumsily. And you guys are all giving me the opportunity to do that. That being said, I am fairly confident that it'll go well, but it will not go as expected.
Right.
This
plan, of course.
This, whatever, 11
We're the pioneers of
plan,
it, huh?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Okay.
I have an 11-page plan of how the course is going to go, and I can pretty much guarantee that things will not go exactly as planned. So
No, I understand how that goes. You know,
Yeah.
training soldiers, it's like, hey, this is how it's going to happen, right? This is how we're going to assault, you know, doing training and stuff. And it's like, what are you doing? Why are you over there? You're supposed to be over here. It's like, well, I don't know. It's like, yeah,
Right.
of course, of course. You know,
Yeah,
that's
so
why that's why you practice. So.
Exactly. So that's it for the Sacred Flip. And I'll send an email on Monday or Tuesday with all that information for everyone. So there you go. And now we can just shoot the shit for a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. What do you guys want to talk about? What's up, Mercury? Say something. What do you want to talk about? I enjoyed you here. I want to say something to you. So the video that you put out today, when you were reading from the comic, you have a beautiful voice to read. I would listen. If you recorded books, I would listen to them.
Thanks, because I have a lot of trouble watching myself. And I was actually curious to watch the majority of the conversation. And I had to put it on double speed because I don't enjoy myself. So if I warp it enough, I can pay attention more to everything. But I've got that thing really strong in my head where as soon as I hear myself talking, it just sounds horrible to me. So I appreciate that feedback. And
yeah, absolutely.
If that's something people like, I could do more of that, sharing like just bits out of books that I happen to be reading at the time. So thanks for that feedback.
You're welcome. I also do the same thing, except for I do it in the gym sauna. Like I'll take like a book, like this is what I'm reading right now. I've been reading this for a little bit over a year, and I'll go in the sauna because not a lot of people go in there. And so when there's nobody in there, I'll read out loud just to try to gain that competence and that confidence. So if I ever have to like teach somebody something in some situation, you know, I have that projection of my voice and all of that. So you do that well.
Yeah, and I guess my experience is reading to my kids and my wife. My wife also likes it sometimes to like lie in bed or when she's not well for me to read to her. So yeah, my experience is just from reading to my wife and kids.
Well, keep it up. It sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks.
So I have to do a side tangent here. So when you read in the sauna, you don't sweat all over your book?
So I do this. So there's a way that you can hold the book that the sweat goes down the pinkies.
What?
Right. So if you hold the book out like this, you can direct your sweat down the back side of your arm, and then it'll go down and drip down your pinky.
Only a military guy would figure that out.
Yeah. Many hours in the sauna. Yeah, that's where I get a lot of my reading done. You know, and it's awesome. Interesting. It's interesting too, because, you know, I'll go exercise and exert myself to exhaustion, and then I'll go read in the sauna, and then I can track my my attention because I'm already tired, and now I'm in a hot and uncomfortable place that's, you know, 120, 130 degrees, maybe even more, and then I can track to see how much I'm paying attention and how much I can comprehend throughout the whatever I'm reading. And once I can't comprehend anymore, then I'm done reading, and then I get out of the sauna, and then I can push that further and further and further, and then that holds my attention. And so now I can read maybe 100 pages at a time before I'm really like done without exerting myself. So I've kind of taken the model of like exercise, right? So like if you go and exercise, you might be able to do 10 bench presses if you've never done it before of, you know, the bar, but keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And by the end of the year, you can bench your weight 10 times, you know, maybe even sooner than that. So I just took that same model and put it on reading.
Well, I love going in the sauna, and I've tried to read in there before, and I just gave up because I didn't have the pinky.
You didn't have the pinky technique down, huh? Well, there you go. There's
that's
a little
game changer. Huh? Yeah.
Right. Try it out, you know. Yeah. Don't put your head over the book either. You know, you got to let the sweat drip down and hold it up. Yeah, and also bring a towel, you know, so you can dab and wipe.
That's a good idea. Right on. That's cool.
So, did you say that you haven't been like a lifelong reader? It's just been a couple years ago that you've started reading?
Yeah, that's right. So I started reading when I got out of the Army in 2015. So the first book that I was really introduced to was The Republic, Plato's Republic. And I had no idea what the hell I was reading. I was like, what is this? You know what I mean? Because I had no idea of logic. You know, I was doing it, you know, but I didn't understand it. I didn't understand arguments. I just kind of lived unconsciously for the most of my life, right? And so, you know, I had self-consciousness, like, of certain things, but then the more I got interested in, it was really just finding my niche. And so I got really into religious studies. So the Bible, I read the Bible a couple of times. It's not all the way through, but, you know, I find bits and pieces that I like, and I kind of thought them over. And then I started to get into Gnosticism. I was like, okay, this is an interesting abstract of the Bible. It's not dogmatic per se, right? And then you learn about like the Council of Nicaea, where they argue for that. They're like, hey, there's gaps here. This is an interpretation of that. You know, has validity to it. And they're like, no. So then you have arguments in the Bible, like around the Bible like that. And then, so I got really religious because that was interesting me. And, you know, I'm kind of dragging this out, but then I got into apologetics. So I got into like Christian apologetics. And that's where I really learned how to argue. And then I realized, I was like, I'm not even in it for the religion. I'm in it for the argument. And then I kind of backtracked because that was like the intellectual side of me taking over. And then I started to go, okay, well, this is cool. What else is there? And then I got into the occult. And then I got really into the occult. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, you know, because it's the complete flip side of religion. But it's, you know, they're both valid in their own sense. And then that led me to psychology. It teed me right into psychology because it's kind of like that balance between, you know, some people could be dogmatic about psychology, and then you could be really abstract about psychology. And then that's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like the bridge between, you know, reality and like the metaphysical in a way.
Wow.
So,
and
there's more to it, but, you know, to not drag out the whole podcast about how I came to reading.
And what pushed that? Because I've had plenty of good friends that have read their whole life and have always enjoyed reading. And I've had plenty of good friends that never read. I don't know that I know anyone else, or at least have discussed it, who's made that big push. Was it just the curiosity? I'm just wondering because many people get stuck in a rut. It's much easier to be what you've been than to do a big transformation. Was there, like for Ryan, it took his addiction hitting rock bottom to force him to make a big change. For me, I never would have done it on my own. It was going insane. Was like this catastrophe I had to learn to deal with. What gave you that push to make that big change and to dive into everything?
No, that's a great question. So the reason all of that happened, so in 2015, I got out of the military. And so all I knew was like the military for the past 6 years of my life. And so I was infantry. And so maybe a lot of your listeners are maybe in the military. And so they know how infantrymen kind of carry themselves. It's a certain brotherhood. There's a pact to it. And so I was at a special time in my life when I joined the military. I didn't have a typical military career where I just got in and then I sat in garrison for years and then I got out. It wasn't like that at all. I got into the military and I was in training for a year before I even got to my unit. And then I got to my unit and immediately went to Afghanistan and then experienced war. And then I got out and then I experienced, you know, the subtleties of the military. And I was like, this is not what I am accustomed to, right? Because I was in this whole, you know, high speed, go 120% all the time. And then there was like this lull, right? Mm-hmm. And then I kind of lost interest in the military. And you build this relationship like no other with people that you've been to war with, right? It's kind of, they're not your brothers, but they're your brothers, but blood wouldn't make you closer, right? And so you have that and then what happens is like a lot of people leave, a lot of people get out, a lot of people commit suicide because of PTSD. A lot of people fall into these depressions. A lot of people that, from my experience, they go down these holes and nobody knows how to fix them because they're not allowed to get help because there's certain stipulations in the military that's kind of like, don't go seek help because you're weak. Like there's a lot of that, right? And, you know, I won't get too far into it, but it's essentially, especially the infantry, and it's based around deployment readiness. So let's say that, you know, you come back from deployment and all your dudes are scarred from PTSD. Right now, your unit is non-deployable. So they're out of commission. They can't do anything because there's not enough soldiers. So, you know, the leadership, it's very toxic leadership, and not everywhere, you know what I mean? But speaking from my experience, it's very toxic leadership.
I've got to connect you with my friend because he was talking about the same shit.
And this is why, like, when I found Jung and I found all of these psychologists, I was like, oh, I've already understood this type of psychological behavior. Now I have the words for it because I've already figured these patterns out, you know, because I've been around it for so long. But, you know, fast forward, so right now I'm in Kentucky. I live in Kentucky. So I live right next to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where the 101st Airborne Division is. and that's where I deployed from. So I moved back here when I got out of the Army, because this was like where I became a man, so to speak, right? I had my first child here. I went to war here. You know, this is where my home is now. And then I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and it was worse. It was way worse. It was way more toxic, and the soldiers were not the same level of fitness or at all. And you're going to an infantry unit. So it's like you have these high speed soldiers, and then now you're going, you know, it's like putting a performance engine in an old rickety car. It's like, you know, the engine can only work so good as the chassis can hold it, you know? And so that just lost interest. And then there was my demise, kind of like lost my all interest in the military. And then I ended up getting out, and then even further depression. I was depressed for about 2 years afterwards. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with what a creative illness is.
Yeah.
So the creative illness process that Henry Ellenberger talks about.
Yeah.
Right. I realized I went through that because I just read the origins and history of the discovery of the unconscious. And so when I came across that, I was like,
killing it with reading.
Right. And so I'm getting to your point, Mercury. It's all going to culminate. I'm trying to speed up, 10 years. But so I look back on it now, and I went through that process. And so I was in this depressed mood. And at that time I wasn't into any religion, anything like this. I was actually into have you heard of the motorsport drifting?
I've heard of it, but I don't know much.
Right, where they take the cars sideways and they kind of tandem with each other, right? And they go around the course, and so I was into the engineering side of that. That's what I was being an entrepreneur. I had a website. Actually, I still have the website. It's up. And some of my buddies from the military, from my deployment, we were creating this business, right? And so we were working hard at it, and then it just kind of dissolved. And then I was left over the abyss with nothing, right? And so I was going through a rough time with my family and my kids and my wife, and, I was separated from them, and, I was going through this whole process of transformation at the time, and I didn't know it. And right. And so for 2 years, I was on a schedule of wake up at 3:00 in the afternoon and go to bed at 3:00 in the morning. And so I was on this, like you said, Merc, this nocturnal life cycle. And I did all my reading there. I did all my reading when I woke up at 3:00 in the afternoon. It's a different world. If you haven't lived that world, like you grocery shop at night, it's like you do these things and people aren't awake. You have a different type of people there. It's a different energy. It's the moon people. They come out at night, right? And so there's a different energy. So, I spent so much time developing this energy of the wake up at 4:00 in the morning and get home at, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm putting 14-hour days and, on a normal cycle, whatever that means. And then I went to the complete opposite. So I got a taste of both worlds, and then I found that medium, and then through reading, right? And then I was like, oh, I got to get my shit together. Because as soon as I found, the whole process of religion and, occultism and psychology, I found out what I wanted to do. And it was, pursue something with the realm of psychology, because it culminated my entire life's experiences, and it gave words to it. And that was the realest thing next to war that I've ever found. And so I have the ability, and I think I'm in a specific and special position within my life to where I can strive towards that. I'm a little bit older, but I can strive towards that, and I can pass that information down to the younger generations as fast as I can. So
that's great.
So that's that, I guess. Does that answer your question, Mercury?
Yes, absolutely. And I like the way you put it, that it's the most real thing other than war. But yeah, when you really find your life's purpose, it's like, even if it's something abstract like thoughts, they can be more real than all the other facts around you. And I think you're in a very unique position to help people, because it seems to me that all of our militaries are designed to get the maximum output from the people, regardless of the damage it does to their psyches. And some people can hold up to it and some can't. And the ones who can't, I think we collectively, remove the borders. All countries will do this. We will use up a human being to get the edge and to get the performance out of them. And then they're fucked up in a way most people can't understand and relate to.
That's right.
And they're on their own, because the government knows how to wear them down, but doesn't know how to put them back together after. So if this is something that you find just shiningly meaningful, I think there's a huge need for you in the world, because there are people you will be able to reach in a way that nobody who's never experienced war will be able to.
Well, I appreciate that. And so to add on to that, one of the things that the day that I knew that I wanted to do this, it correlated with the day that, because I was going to counseling when I was in the military. And so I was that guy, right? That guy, the one that went against what people said. And I've always kind of been that, buck the tyrant. I see you, I'm going to call you out on what you're doing and it's wrong, and you can take a little bit. It's like, I'm not weak, blah, 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 because what's going to happen is they're going to push you and they're going to push you and they're going to do this and see what you're made of. And they're going to see how you move when they do certain things, but they don't expect you to go, stop. And when they do, then you can see how they react. And then if you pursue that, they didn't know who you were in the first place, because now they don't know what to do with you because they've gotten away with it every other time. So, and what I'm saying about that is, as soon as I decided to go to behavioral health and started to talk to somebody, like the counselor didn't say a word, really. She was like, oh, this is who I am. This is what I want to try to do with you. And I was like, okay. And then I just talked for, an hour to 2 hours every week with her. And I figured out all of my problems. And one of the ways that I figured out one of my problems was, so in Afghanistan, one of the things that I had is, so, you take some of the most memorable and destructive moments that you have that are weighing on you, right? And so I did this before I knew anything about psychology whatsoever. And so when I was out of the military, what I did was I wrote it all down. That's when I learned how to write, because that was like the first thing I ever wrote down, besides like business strategies and planning and website development and things like that. It was like my soul on paper. I never did that because, sometimes you don't want to let things go because it's all you have. And so, but you also don't want to know about it, right? And so from a young age, I've had all of these types of memories. And so what I did was I wrote it down, the terrible memories from Afghanistan, and I went out into the field and I burned it and I let it go. Mm. And like, I felt this release and I went, like right now I'm getting goosebumps. Like I went, whoa, what is that? And so I think that was one of so I guess that's the death and a rebirth. That's kind of like a transformation process right there. And,
yes.
I acted it out. I fulfilled that narrative of what human beings do without ever knowing it. And then when I found psychology, I read about that and I went, this is what I need to do. And, a caveat to that was, Jung said, most psychologists think that they choose the profession, but the profession really chooses them. Yeah. And so their soul is guided towards that for some reason. And, they have all the reasons, they just have to figure them out.
Yeah.
So.
Beautiful story. You're also a good speaker. Have you ever considered doing a podcast or anything of that nature?
Yeah, oh, yeah. That's one reason why I'm doing this, is because, I've had the workings in my mind of what I wanted to do with podcasts and how I want to do it, but I've just never pulled the trigger. It's always something else. I've always moved it. It's also anxiety. Like, I don't want to look stupid on camera or anything. So
you're going to look stupid. You just got to get rid of that right away. Cause and then you're going to look great sometimes too, but you probably saw me flailing around a little bit. And it's just part of it, is those little moments of looking stupid. It's kind of like Peterson talks about. You have to be a fool to do anything new. You know that part of his teaching, I'm guessing.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. But yeah, there's times where I still feel like, man, that didn't sound very good, or gosh, I could have said that way more clearly, or did I really just say that? Or there's those thoughts in my head, and sometimes they're right, and that's when it's painful. It's like, yeah, I really could have done better. And sometimes it's just me beating myself up for no good reason. And Mercury helps me separate those out. That luckily, having a partner, you get that experience of having another person that can tell you, Ryan, you're just beating yourself up right now, versus just having your own echo chamber of your brain, just trying to figure out how you're doing. And that's difficult.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
That's one of the things is, because I just recently started going back to school last fall semester. And I had taken my first writing courses, awesome courses. Because like I said, I didn't know how to write. I didn't know how to really do anything, like put my thoughts really on paper in some type of coherent manner besides, dark poetry in a way, you know what I mean? And so doing that really woke me up to writing. And there's a better word for it, but it's like your soul. It's your soul expressing itself. And so writing's no different than thinking, and thinking's no different than speaking, and all of these things. And so the way that my mind works, I realized that wasn't always correct when I put it on paper, because what goes on paper is absolutely different, right? Because then you can see that in a way, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but sometimes I won't write things down because I don't want to acknowledge them, right? And so I'll write something and it's like, well, that's not true. I can't, right? And so I'll sit on this thing for like a week and I'll be like, okay, well, let me just get rid of that, right? Because I don't actually believe that, right? And so you're sifting through all of these thoughts that are not yours at all, right? Peterson talks about that as well. It's like, how much of what you think and who you are is not you at all. And then you're just representing that idea unconsciously and you have no idea. Right. And so writing does that for you. Writing goes, here you go. This is you. Right. Because if you write it down, then it's true. Right. Yes. Essentially, you're confronting it.
Well, and that's really what individuation is in the last analysis. It's becoming more yourself. And that's at the end of Jung's life where he was really into drawing the mandalas and exploring every single facet of that creation. And then Strachan took that and he turned that into creating the mandala of your subpersonalities. Like, if you explore the ultimate potential of one aspect of yourself, and then you walk that back to the totality, and then you explore another, and it's that labyrinth where you're going all the way to the center, you're going around and back in and around and back in, and then it makes this totality, the self. That's what Jung called the self. That's your wholeness. That is the Gestalt. And the powerful thing about the Gestalt process is when you act out that part, when you act out that subpersonality, when you allow it to have a voice, when you do the psychodrama with it, you're actually allowing your psyche to start sorting something out. And then just by sheer, it's almost becomes automatic. It just starts reorganizing itself based on these principles. And so a lot of people think, like, I have to figure it out. I have to figure out transformation. Like, I have to figure out what it is that exactly all the details. How do I need to become? What does it look like? Like, they think they're planning it. They think they're directing it, right? But really, it's just like, if you just step into it, it takes over you. The process, you collaborate with the process. And if you're lucky, you'll be able to hold on long enough to actually see some good come out of it. But it's just such a beautiful process that you've been through. I'm listening to your story, and you're doing that. You're allowing different parts of you to express, and you've gone counterculture at times where it wasn't easy to do. And so even in that process, you're individuating. And then now in the point of your life where you're reading and you're gathering all this information and you're in school, and now you're like, it almost sounds like you're finding a whole new level of leadership that's possible for you. Because when I listen to you speak, I hear someone who commands attention. When I hear your ideas, I hear someone who's thought things through. So I'm seeing a leader, like a potential leader, kind of like Mercury said. Like, you could, I don't know what you're doing already that's making a difference. I'm sure it's plenty, but I just want to encourage that in you, man. And I just see that. I see that. I don't know if that makes sense or if that resonates with you, but that.
No, absolutely. So. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. When I was in the military, like, I think I was an E3 or an E4. So that's like, 3 years in the Army, 2 years in the Army, in a leadership position. So I had soldiers under me. And so one thing that I would always do is, one moment, it's cold in here. So from a early, and this is, I guess you could say, from my childhood experiences, I was very observant as a child. I didn't really speak much except for jokes. Like, I wanted to be a comedian when I was younger. That's all I wanted to do. Is I played music and I wanted to be a comedian. And I remember one time I completely forgot how to be funny. It was probably like when I was like 14 or 15. And I was just like, that was probably like, I went into a depression because of that. And I just couldn't think of anything. Right. But what happened was later on, it developed into a different type of humor. But So all of these observations from when I was younger, then I joined the military, and I was like, oh, I see. I'm not doing those things. I'm not going to pass those things on that are destructive. I'm going to take the things that I like and leave the things I hate, and then pass those good things on, because I see how much people need leadership. And so as soon as I figured that little key out, like that rose me above other people, right? And then giving myself a voice as well, and standing up to things that I felt subjectively were wrong, right? Like harassing people for no good reason, right? You know, you could joke around. It's the infantry, you know, you got to have a tough skin, like suck it the fuck up. But, you know, there's a difference between joking and elbow pushing to actual psychological abuse. And some people don't know that line. And those people are in higher leadership positions, right? Wow. And so what are they going to teach other people? Either demand power and respect, right? Or else you're weak. What else are you going to do? Because that person doesn't know how to do anything else. And I kind of extracted the things that I liked and brought a new way of leadership. And so the way that my first leadership position, the way that it came to is there was a bunch of guys up for the position. And so they called a bunch of us in, right? And asked us questions and all of this, right? And I was chosen, and they went, yeah, the people want you to be the leader. And I don't know fucking why, but you know, you're the new team leader. And I was like, I know why. Right. So I would do things like this when I was an NCO. So when I was a sergeant, you're supposed to stand at parade rest and show respect and call you sergeant and all of that. Right. And so that can get to people's heads, especially if you don't have anything else to fall back on. Right. That's your ego. Right. You develop this super sense of ego of I am the authority. Right. Just like police officers get, just like people in positions of different authority. And so what I did was I did it the opposite. I said, what's your name? You know, and I would always start out with a handshake. And they'd tell me, I said, you could call me Chris. As long as you respect me, there's this mutual back and forth. I don't look down upon you. You're going to be in my shoes. So I need to teach you how to do my job. Right. Mm-hmm. And so there's that kind of mindset. And that's just I've kind of developed that unconsciously and consciously. And, you know, I can see it in school now. And so the most recent example, and I'll end with this, the most recent example is I just got finished with my first introductory psychology course. And we had to give presentations, and it was very interesting to see the group of students, how anxious they get. And, you know, they're anywhere from 20 to 27. You know, there's some older heads in there too, but you can just see. And, you know, it was like 5-minute presentation. You get to choose the subject on what we're talking about that week. And you can just see as the tensions boil to the surface. And, you know, I chose psychoanalysis. And so, you know, because I knew that the best. You know, I know some of the other theories, but psychoanalysis really intrigues me because Jung and Freud's relationship and all of that. And so when it came time for me to give my speech or whatever presentation, I spoke for an hour. Right. And I didn't even notice. Like, I was like, okay, 15 minutes. Right. And I was like trying to go through the slides, and next thing you know, I'm just doing this. And I'm like putting all my experiences together with these ideas, and you know what I mean? Trying to explain ego defense mechanisms in more layman's terms and not textbook terms and all of this. And next thing I knew, it was like an hour long. And I'm like, holy moly, I can do this. Maybe I could do this.
Yes.
Right? It was like, and you know, I was nervous too. I was like, oh God, like sweating and stuff. But you know, you get over that. And you know, maybe I encouraged other people. You know, I did not get a clap afterwards. Everyone else got a clap. And everyone else was stumbling forward as well, and I did as well, but I didn't get a clap. Right. So that's also telling. It's like, I see, right? Because you know, you can look at that from many different points of view, but one point of view would be, what is it? Overcompensation in a way. I forget what the technical term is, right? To where, you know, somebody goes up there and does a terrible job, and everybody knows that they did a terrible job, so they get the biggest round of applause. You know what I'm saying? It's like, don't feel like such an asshole and an idiot, right? And that's good, right? In that situation. But, you know, the unconscious is really speaking if you're paying attention, right? Because that's how I saw it. And, you know, when I didn't get the applause, I was like, oh, is that the opposite of that? Did I just like shock people? That, you know, and so I don't know, you know, it's up in the air, but that's how it felt to me. So, you know, that was another position of leadership and, you know, transformation for me as well.
And I find you an excellent speaker. So whether it's you want to do teaching, podcasting, therapy, anything like that, whether you're speaking to individuals or groups, you're very articulate, you're very confident, and you're a character. Your personality comes across fairly quickly, and it's a good character. People are also going to be instantly drawn to the fact that you're a soldier. Civilians are fascinated by that. It gives you a good opening. As soon as there's a book or a movie and a character's an ex-soldier, the whole audience pays a little bit more attention.
That's
similar advantage I had. Everyone's fascinated by lunatics. So this guy's crazy. He's been in a mental hospital. It's same thing, book or movie. As soon as there's a lunatic, it's like, oh, this character's interesting. And that gets their attention. Underneath that, I find, and like Peterson says this, when you're teaching, you should be teaching from personal experience. And it's that we are all fascinated by the genuine experiences each other have. And one of your great skills here is how well you're getting to know yourself. Your exploration of the inner world and psychology and the esoteric and religions, the way that has taught you more about yourself, like you feel it in yourself. It feels so real. It adds depth to your experience of being. It just keeps, it's like when you take raw footage of a movie and you add the music and you add, all these other layers to the movie, that it becomes a deeper, richer experience.
It becomes a symphony, right?
Absolutely. You're beginning to experience that within yourself, and your whole life is becoming a deeper, richer thing. Everybody enjoys that when it happens. And so many of us are not able to find that within themselves. So the better you know yourself and you share that with people, and it's the way it makes you feel. It's when you attach, and you do this naturally. You get excited when you're talking about something exciting. You share the emotion as well. And it lets people know what it's like to be you.
Yeah.
That is what people are going to get a lot out of. And with leadership and all of this leadership training, it's about conveying knowledge. It's about getting physical performance out of people. It's all very technical and real world. But what you were interested in as a child, the type of comedy you wanted to do as a child, and music, those are not about conveying information. It's not about leading somebody, but it's about creating emotional experience within someone. Like, without drugs, what better way is there to make people have emotional experiences than music? And the same thing, humor, especially that pure humor that a child wants to do. What you were wanting to do was give people internal experiences. If you can combine those two skills, leadership, passing on information, with the ability to connect and give emotional experience, you will be a very powerful therapist, teacher, just human being.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That was actually one of the things, like I was talking about earlier, that I wanted to do is I want to go work at behavioral health here on the Army post, because I know how much it helped me. And so one of the things that I was really struggling with is, should I go? Because if you're familiar with like transference and countertransference, and, I think that those are the most important things. A lot of people will disagree with me, but I think it's important to be in the therapy together.
Yeah.
Right. You have to, because, or else, Freud had his point of view, and, absolutely, I understand that. But there's nothing better than speaking your soul forward to another person who's receiving it and giving you a little something back, right? Instead of just being this blank slate to where, you can project yourself onto. So
right.
I think I can, in a sense, right? Who better to help soldiers with PTSD than one who has it, right?
Yeah.
So, right? I don't know if Jung says this or not, but, well, I can't think of it right now. Maybe it'll come to me later.
Yeah, and I like what you said about transference and countertransference. And projection in general gets a bad rep. And those are both types of projection. But projection essentially being that which is inside of us getting put out there. That's the only way we can ever learn about ourselves. Otherwise, we have no mirror. We have no way to perceive. It would be like a fish. It would be like water to a fish. Fish doesn't know it's in water. All it ever swims in is water. So the projective mechanism, the ability to say, this is what I'm seeing out there, and then to turn that around and say, is that really, maybe that's what I'm seeing out there is actually parts of myself. That's where the deep work can start. Projection's a way of learning about ourselves. That's the way I look at it. And yeah, sometimes we can project on other people, and that's, if we don't take responsibility for it, that's where it gets nasty, you know.
Right. It's you don't want to see it. You don't want to see it. Because it's like, oh, that's me. It's like, yeah, I mean, Jung said it best, right? The evil that you see in somebody else is probably you.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, that's a terrible thing to think about.
And
you know, you're an ugly person. It's like, where's that coming from?
Yeah, and with certain things, I find we only understand anything by projecting. And so if I watch somebody else burn their hand on the stove, I project my experience of what a burn feels like, and I assume they're feeling the same thing. Yeah. When you see someone else laugh, you project what it feels like to laugh and assume they're feeling it. So I find just very much that's how we experience everything, is if we haven't felt it ourselves, we really can't understand it. And with everything, we're projecting how we feel, and it might be different for that person. Like, I will assume everyone's hand feels the same when they burn it, but there will be people that that's not true for. People whose pain nerves don't work correctly. What I project won't be what they experience at all.
Yes.
Right. That's a good point, because I brought this up in class maybe like 3 weeks ago to try to get the point across. It's like this exact thing we were talking about, and somebody just didn't understand. I said, think about it like this. Have you ever broken a bone? And they were like, no. I was like, well, I've broken lots of bones because I skateboarded when I was younger, right? So now if I break my bone, you can think that you know what that feels like, but you can never actually know what that feels like. You can only assimilate, or you can only compare that to the highest amount of pain that you think a bone breaking equals, right? And they're like, oh, I understand. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and before I went nuts, I was very close with someone who had bad depression, and I couldn't understand it at all. There was nothing in me I could project on that. And looking, even at the time, I felt I had so much of that, like family members and close people, like, oh, just pull yourself out of it. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, no big deal. I'll just do that.
Yeah, I had so much of that, even though I was trying to understand. But then once I
like rationalization
and look back, I realized I was so far from understanding it. I had no idea. And now I can find different specifics about different people's deep depressions by talking to them and projecting different moments. So I'm seeing this, what I experienced, and I say it, and they might correct me a bit. No, it's not quite that physically lethargic, but I look in my own experience. Okay, sorry, I was projecting this. And I find instead of not projecting, I find something more accurate to project. And the more I learn, the more I adjust what I can project. At least that's what it seems to me like I'm doing, that if I haven't experienced something, I can't understand it in someone else. So I'm always projecting.
Yes, and we also project aspects of our potential onto others. In other words, if you watch a movie and you strongly identify with one of the main characters, one of the heroes of that story, or one of the villains, potentially, but specifically as far as your positive potential goes, you are projecting something that you see as a capacity within yourself. You're just not fully aware of it. It's like, why do I like Gandalf so much? Not everybody likes Gandalf.
Hey, I got Merlin right there.
Yeah. What is it about Merlin specifically? Like Merlin, I'm not a Merlin guy. I'm a Gandalf guy. Like, it's Gandalf for me. Like, that's my guy. But when you start to look at that, you see that the world is truly reflecting all aspects, all shades of light and dark back onto us at all times. When we're looking at heroes or mythological figures, a lot of times we're seeing aspects of ourselves. What could I possibly embody in my life? How could I become? But we never think that far. Typically, we always, oh, that was cool, that was sweet, like that character's awesome. Like, that's about as far as our brains typically go with it. But I think as a reflective exercise to ask the question, what is it about this that really gets me going? What do I feel when I see this character do this thing? Like, one of the scenes in Lord of the Rings I love is "You shall not pass." That just gives me the chills. I love that. He throws down the staff, the light, projects out of his body. the bridge collapses, the Balrog falls into the depths, the whip comes up and grabs Gandalf, and they go down together. And there's something about that. And you could say, yeah, that's just your imagination and you like it. But for me, it's like, no, it's something captures me, something calls to me, there's an intimation of something within my own soul about those images. And then that's where the active imagination that Jung teaches comes in. How can I play with that energy a little bit? How might I integrate that into my capacity as a human being? Maybe the "you shall not pass" is like my own inner strength, my own boundaries in life that I need to set. I don't know, but these are all questions that we could be asking when we feel captivated by an image. That's why I love the program I went through where we learned about transformational work. We went outside into nature, and people would project their stories onto trees and creek beds and rocks and the wind blowing, and they'd create all these fascinating metaphors that were grist for the mill of understanding their psyche. It's like, yeah, the wind, when it blows at this time, it's like the exact feeling that I'm having about the grief of losing my mother. And it's just like, whew, and it's like, of course, I don't understand what that person's saying, but the point is that they're having a powerful experience. They're living in a world of images. They're living in a world of projections. And it's, and that's how we get to know ourselves. And even like something as simple as a fork in the road. It's like they come up to the fork in the road, and then all of a sudden they're like, I get it. I get it now. I'm split between these two parts of my life. And that their brain figures something out in that moment that they've been wrestling with. And nature provided the projective mechanism by which they could learn about themselves. But if we were just in an empty room with no imagination, with no art, with no nature, it just becomes harder and harder to see these aspects of ourselves. And that's why I think stagnation and some of the directions that we're heading in as a society, where it's all square, it's all cubicle, it's all in this this environment of no imagination, a lack of imagination. It's a crisis of the soul. We're living in a time in society where people are losing their imagination. They're losing that fantastical realm, that mythological capacity. And that's why I think Nietzsche declared God is dead. And we're seeing the fallout of that. And even the technological advances we're having, as great as they are, in some ways, we're being robbed of some of the deepest parts of ourselves, in my estimation. And I was reading somebody the other day, I don't know if it was in a book or in a conversation, was talking about the relationship between the archetype of Lucifer and technology. It was Jung. He was literally looking at Revelations and relating it to the archetype of Lucifer and how the Industrial Revolution ties exactly into that downfall of the soul. Anyways.
I absolutely agree, because when I was doing my occultic studies, right, you learn about Saturn, you learn about, the cube and all of these symbolic representations and how that possesses people into certain ideologies and beliefs, and that projected onto astrology and how everything kind of works in tandem with one another. And it's very, like you said earlier, very esoteric in nature, and those can go down some rabbit holes, right? Because then you start thinking like, oh, well, what's the number of the beast? What's that? And then you see people getting chipped and barcoded and all of this, and technology and brain implants, and that's that, right? And so you can have this Armageddon-like future, this dystopia that's makes you cling to your dogma even more, right? Instead of ever questioning what that is, because the way that I look at it is, that's you. The mark of the beast, his number is 666. That's carbon. That's you. You're a human being made out of carbon, and you know what I mean? You're the beast.
Right, exactly.
So that's the way that I see it. And it's like you can really see and I'm not knocking religion here at all, but because I was in this mindset, it's like, oh, that's not me. That ain't me. But, little did I know, of course that's me. Hello.
Right.
Hello, I went to war. I know what it's made out of,
Right.
But then when I started making those jumps and making those leaps and that fork in the road, it's like, that's not me. Yes, it is. Here's all the reasons it's you. Here's all the reasons it's not you. Well, the only reasons that were telling me it's not me is my dogmatic belief in Christianity. Right? Because you don't want to see those dark parts of yourself, and that blinds you to everything else. And then you go, oh, this is me. Well, how is this me? oh, so I'm more like Lucifer than I think, right? That's like the intellectual, that's like when people are possessed by the animus, right? That's like Lucifer in a way, right? Letting the rationality take hold of you.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
Right. And you can, like, exactly like Peterson says, I don't remember where he says this, but he says Jung believed that he can see the anima in the animus. And I don't know if you can see that, but I absolutely see that, especially when you go to universities and you see that in a bunch of like underdeveloped kids, because they're still kids. I don't care how old they are. I wrote a paper on this. It was about the psychological age of development and the biological age of development, and what happens when those are mismatched, and what happens when those proceed along the lines of development in tandem. And like that really opened my eyes up to incorporating the anima and the animus and seeing that within people. And all you have to do is like use the Socratic method of argumentation against somebody, and you can see the animus pop right out, boom, in females. And you can see the anima take hold of the males when you use that same line of Socratic questioning. It's like, here, let me just push you on your belief right here and watch you blow out into emotion, or watch you blow out into argumentation and straw man and ad hominems. It's like, oh my, and that's why I decided to really study Jung. And that's why I bought all his books, just because like the Devouring Mother, and, you know, he really took the Devouring Mother from like the Oedipal complex in a way. And it's like, everyone's like, oh, Oedipal complex is BS. It's like, yeah, right. You ever seen the movie Waterboy? You know what I mean? That's the Devouring Mother, but it's also the Oedipal complex, but it's not sexual. Right. Because the mother hates the father and projects that onto the son, and never lets the son go, and keeps him from all of his development, and keeps him away from women that can possibly take him away from the hero's journey. It's exactly that. And people, everyday life, you'll watch that and you'll go, that's bad. But then I tell you what it is, and it's related with sex just in the most, 1% way that it can possibly happen, and people discredit it and throw it out the window. It's like, I talked for like 20 minutes on that in my presentation of psychoanalysis, and
I think people are probably, I think the reason people didn't applaud is, my guess is it's intimidating to have such a passionate,
I think so.
Because I get it. Like, that's how I am too. I'm like, boom. But like, people can't process that information, especially when someone strongly believes someone. I mean, think about how many people go to university. They're just trying to like, I didn't know what else to do. Then when they come across someone that's like, what? They're like, dude, don't take this too seriously, man. We're just trying to get through school.
We're just trying to scoot by to the capitalist
Don't get all
system,
intellectual, and don't ask too many questions. And so I think it would be more intimidation than anything else. Now that I think of it, because when you see someone that's truly living up to their potential, and like you're sitting there, and you're like, man, I haven't.
It casts a shadow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I would agree with you. Yeah.
So I hope you can see that, regardless of whether it's reflected by your peers in school, that it's reflected by people like Mercury and I that do appreciate your intelligence and your ability to speak. And by the way, you should have been doing podcasts yesterday, not today or tomorrow, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I know.
Like, you have you're talented, Cris. You've got a lot of potential in there. So again, I know you have other commitments, other things that you have to do. You've got a family, you've got other work that you're doing, but I implore you, man, start recording yourself speaking as much as you can, because it sure is nice to listen to. And I would be a subscriber. I would be a fan. So take that not as me tooting your horn, because I don't tell that to people. I haven't told that to anyone else. I mean, I've told our listeners what I honestly think. If they have certain talents, I tell them. Nolan, I tell him about his talents in poetry, but I don't tell people to go do a podcast unless I think they should. So I hope you take that to heart.
Sure. I appreciate that. Thank you. And, kind of adding on what you're saying, it's intimidating. I realize that more and more, because, I kind of address the psychological endeavor from my own experience, and I go, it's overwhelming, full of emotion, right? Because this is one way I can express the emotion that I can't otherwise express, is in this pseudoscientific field, and go, look, there's some truth to it. You just don't know it's there. And just because it's not scientifically proven doesn't mean it's not true. And people can't wrap their heads around that. And so that's like the first marker of where they're at developmentally. And so if you keep pushing that, right, and not understand, like, and this is exactly what you're talking about, because I can get to that point, of where it becomes argumentative and I can hold a position and rip people's the legs out from under people, and then they fall back onto these, subpar arguments. And then it's like, I'll keep ripping. Right. And you can see, you don't even have to go down that road to do the same thing. You can just tell somebody so much truth. It's so heavy, it crushes them. And then you can watch that happen. And you can go, oh, that's terrible because I want to help you. So it's terrible because you want to help them by telling them the truth, but then you realize that the truth is too heavy to carry. And then you go, how do I implement the truth in the way that you just give them pieces of the cake until they make the cake?
Yes.
Not the whole cake right away.
A wise man once told me, you should always tell people the truth they can hear, but not the truth they can't hear. I don't know if that's true in every circumstance, but it certainly sounded nice.
Well, if they can't hear it, what's the point? Like, you might say he can't hear it, but he needs to know it. It doesn't matter how much they need to know it. If they can't hear it, what's the point?
Right.
But I was going to say the exact same thing. And the feeling I had was that perhaps his talk involved too much information for the audience to keep up with. And
absolutely.
They didn't know if it was brilliant or nonsense because they couldn't keep up with it. And so they didn't know whether to applaud or not. And a person, not only are there truths certain people aren't ready to hear, which is so difficult, especially if you care about the person. But on top of that, people can only learn so much at a time. And so it's just like the gym. You can only do so many push-ups the first day, and then you just have to stop, and you have to absorb and heal from that much. So some people can only take in so much at a time, and when it's in person, you will be able to read that from people. You can tell when they're engaged, they're absorbing it, and then you can see when they get full, and then you can see that if you go past that, they're not taking it in anymore. But as far as your videos go, like if you begin doing videos, I absolutely also would subscribe right away and wouldn't say that to just anyone.
Exactly.
I would worry about going over people's heads with your videos because they can just stop at 10 minutes in if their brain's full and come back later. On the other hand, there will be people who are ready to intellectually devour hours of your material because they're at a similar place you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to connect you to my buddy Dennis. He's also the guy, ex-military. He's starting a podcast. He's into Jung with me in class, and he's doing the same thing. He's stalling out because his own reasons, but you guys would have a useful conversation. So if you don't mind, I'd like to connect you two via email and just put it out there. You guys don't have to take me up on it, but I think it might be.
No, that's cool. That'd be great. That's why I'm getting more involved in because I love school. Like I went to school when I was younger, like I was homeschooled, pulled out of school. So I didn't really have that sociability, but I had good friends around me. And now I'm back in school and I'm like, I need this interaction with people because I need to develop and I need to help other people develop and they need to help me develop. And so we can come together in spirit, right? Conspiracy, two or more people coming together in spirit and working towards a higher truth, kind of like a Rogerian idea, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's beautiful.
I think that'd be great.
That'd
be awesome.
And it's an open door, man. If you ever have a topic that you want to come do a podcast, sometimes our schedule is a few weeks out and it's getting busier, but you're always welcome. So continue to reach out because I'd like to do more podcasts with you. I enjoyed this a lot.
And
actually, I had a lot of fun too.
I'd love to have Cris and Dennis on together sometime.
Yeah, actually, we should do that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
There's another guy I want to have on who's also currently military. I think he's a colonel or I don't know. He's a high rank. And he's a doctor, Dr. Kylie Laughlin, and he's a Jungian psychologist, and he's also close with Dennis. So I'd like to have him on. I'm fascinated by the ex-military folks who are infatuated with psychology. I think it's like, I didn't know they were out there. I didn't know people like you existed. It really touches my heart. No, it's seriously. We're here. I really relate to the archetype of the warrior in some ways, right? Like, and there's too many other parts of me that would hold me back from ever going to that point. But I can relate to some of the nuances of it, although I could never claim that I understand it fully from your perspective, obviously. But So combine that with an intellectual appetite plus wanting to help people is very powerful. Very, very powerful. Strong men who have been to war that want to open up their hearts, be vulnerable, and love people, dude, that makes me want to cry. Like, that's fucking amazing. So thank you, dude. I mean, you and Dennis, man, you guys, you guys make me piss my pants. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. I told you, civilians are fascinated by soldiers. Yeah, a sweet, sensitive soldier, a lot of people would just come running.
I guess I'm one of those civilians, man. It's just it's a really special feeling, and it really there's a level of respect that comes with it, but also just the odds of someone like you even understanding what it is to be vulnerable, with the conditioning that you explained that happens in the military. Dude, you're I don't know, what do you think, 1 in a million? I mean, that's I've not been in that environment, but from what you've explained to me, from what Dennis has told me, you guys are rare in those groups, people like you.
Right. Well, to put it into perspective, there's only 1% of the United States that join the military. 1%. There's like 300,000 something soldiers. I'm pretty sure that's about it. And then, so now that's all the soldiers. And then now let's divide that into infantry. And now that's even a smaller section. And now let's divide that again into soldiers who've been overseas that are infantry. Right. And then now let's divide that into soldiers that have been overseas, that have been in combat, that are infantry. Right. Yeah. And so it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Like you said, and so, you know, I appreciate everything that you guys are saying. And I'm having a great time talk to you guys because, you know, it's awesome to see it. And it's awesome to share my experiences with something that you've probably never experienced. And same with you guys. Like, I don't know anything about you guys, and I'm just fascinated by what you're doing and what Merc's doing. And you guys are like, I say this to you guys, you know, in the email, it's like, you guys are so different, but you guys are like so complement each other so well.
Yeah.
Right?
You've actually
you guys
said that
are from different spectrums, and it's like you guys are like one being, and this is like integration of the shadow and the intellect in a way. Right?
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's an amazing sight to see both of you guys like this. You guys are like the complete opposite. I mean, just looking at the screen, right? It's like dark, smoking cigarettes, not giving a shit, right? This is who you are. This is like button-up shirt, books behind you, you know, certificates. It's like, you know, and it's awesome because you guys learn a lot from each other.
Dude, you're awesome. I had so much fun. This is one of my favorite podcasts that we've done. This is great.
I hope to come on again. You know, I had a lot of fun here.
Yeah, awesome, dude. Well, I got to wrap it up and get going, but you cool if we post all this? Is there anything you want me to take out? You want me to edit out your kids running around? Use your best judgment.
I think you'll be okay. Yeah.
What about your kids?
No kids.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
So that'll be okay. Just me. That'll be all right.
That's what I thought. Cool. I'll take that part out. Right on.
All right. Cool.
All right. I'll see you on June 1st. I'm going to be just prepare yourself. I'm going to be stepping into my teacher facilitator part. So I'm going to be focused, man. So get ready for that.
All right. We'll see it. Be in the zone.
All right. Anything you want to say, Merc, before we?
I did just want to add that what he said about us as a pair on the various polarities. I agree, and I find that on top of the way me and Ryan are meshing, in that space between us created by the two polarities, I'm finding the channels taking more and more shape with people like yourself.
Yeah.
And the same as Ryan, you bring something to this whole experience absolutely no one else does. But again, I feel like you just slot right in and are a part of this. And the channel's becoming something much more than just the combination of me and Ryan. It's becoming everyone else interacts in that space we've created between us. And more and more, you guys are all becoming a bigger and bigger part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. All right, guys, I got to get going. I'm going to end the call. See ya.
All right, Mercury. Have a good night. See you guys. Have a good weekend. Take it easy.
Great meeting you.